They're not too happy about that. Back again. Back again. I just did my third trip back to the old hood. And it's getting a little old, man. I could almost recite the BC Ferries food menu off by heart for anything you want. Also had, the thought of eating food in the BC Ferries now just makes me want to frickin' cringe. But anyway, I had to go back and get, pick up my last 100 bales of hay maybe. 7 hours travel one way if I was to go non-stop, including the ferry. But I did go on a big major hike. Oh, it's pretty echoey in here. I'm gonna open up the big door. See if I can fix that up. But what I figured I can do with that new GoPro camera that I bought is I can actually go to crazy places and share where I am with the planet and share voices with the camera, load the content onto my phone and use the iPhone editor, movie editor, whatever. And I can actually manage to make it good enough to deliver out to you guys. Well, I forgot the GoPro. And then I had my Sony Handycam, but the phone will not read the files from that Sony Handycam. And then I realized, oh, but it'll read from the Canon, but the Canon was here at home as well. So I was screwed for getting caught up in sharing voices. But I did go on one hell of a frickin' burner hike. I sweat through my 3 layers and through my jacket I wanted to get to these cameras that I had on this one particular mountain. And I tried a different route, went around the backside, got close as I could with the pickup, and then I just started hoofing it. Well, this is the part where I just hope to God your camera's still there. It's there. You can just see the string. Check out how subtle the string is on my camera. There we go. And I filmed a cute little guy on the side of the one thing I did manage to film. I think it's a pika, P-I-C-A. I'm pretty sure it is, mountain pika. They look like a mouse with no tail. And we sat there looking at each other for quite a while, so I videotaped him. So here he is, right here. But anyways, in the meantime, check this little guy out. I'm just gonna go open up the garage door and see if I might be able to get rid of some of this echo. try that. That's a little better. Yeah, that's better for sure. So remember in the past, this whole ride, I've been really concerned about why people absolutely drop each other and stop talking to each other immediately after seeing one of these damn things. And I've known people personally, that old ex-girlfriend of mine from years ago, I shared that story quite a while ago. She was driving with her friend. They were like 19 or 20, and they're driving from Whistler, British Columbia to Edmonton. And by the time they got just before Valemont, it's the only place the highway starts to climb up between Clearwater and Valemont. All you people familiar with that highway know exactly what I'm talking. And they're going up there through a whiteout, a full whiteout, and she was doing like 2 miles an hour, and she was just started saying, "I can't believe I'm even driving right now." And looks over, it's like 10 o'clock, and every time looks over, and her friend was plastered up against the passenger side of the car like this, looking past her face out the driver's side window. Terror on her face, and she looked over, and this thing's face was this far away from her face. Stooped over, lopping along beside the car, looking in at them. I shared that one earlier. And she couldn't believe. She said his teeth were straight, just like ours. She said the look on his face was like it was, she goes, it's like it was rocking it out, like he was having fun, like he was entertaining himself, was the look on his face she described. She had zero knowledge of these things, these people, whatever you want to call them, beforehand. And she said she then realized she was all the way on the other side of the highway, which would have put her to that drop off on the left. And she's going, oh shit, and then she's going to drive back, and then he faded away out of the lights, and that was it. And then they made it to Valemont, and there's a Husky station there. Pulled into the Husky station, they went and sat in that coffee shop and didn't say a word to each other the whole time. Excuse me, waited till it was daylight out, and then got in the car and carried on to Edmonton, where she was originally from. Dropped her friend off. Last time she saw her, and they never spoke again. Years later, when we met and we talked about this, and then she actually found the girl on social media, messaged her, didn't message her back. Didn't message her back. And I think that was one of the first times is when I heard of people absolutely dropping each other after sharing one of these terrifying experiences. So it's always took note, my curiosity to that whenever it comes up here. And it comes up all the time. And it makes me frustrated. So, anyway, we talked about this last time, and sure enough, I got a lot of emails in from people to explain what it may be, because remember I said somebody's got to be out there that has a possible explanation for this. Maybe there's possibly even a name for it. And it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out why, really, right? When you think about it, it's terrifying. It's absolutely frickin' terrifying, and people don't want to relive it, obviously, but it still frustrates me. So we had, I'll get this email out right away as a reply. It's called A Psychologist's Perspective, all right? Steve, I've been following you for about 2 or 2.5 years now, and I certainly appreciate your videos. I'm sure they have been immensely helpful to many who have had these unwanted and unexpected experiences. I'm a retired professor of psychology, and I think I can offer some insight into why people in groups see these things split up and many times never want to interact with each other again. I hesitated when it came to writing to you because the issue is somewhat complicated, but it deserves an answer, so here we go. There are 3 areas that interact with one another when people see Sabbath. These include a fear of the unknown, a sense of safety or being safe, and a sense of control. The sense of control is probably the most important one, and it connects the other 2 together, as you'll see shortly, if I can explain it adequately. Humans' worldview is tied up closely to the idea that we are in control of pretty much everything. We are the masters of our own destiny. We control who we are, how we interact with others, and how we function in our environment. We are the apex predator on Earth, we think, because of our intelligence. We may not have the teeth or claws of a bear, but we have used our brains to develop firearms to extend our dominance over virtually every other species on the planet. And anything we can't control, we can turn over to our government, which is capable of handling anything we can't do on our own. We know everything that is worth knowing, and anything that we don't know doesn't matter. Arrogant, isn't it? But it is how we have been taught, and many have adopted this position as fact. We are safe in the woods and in our homes because we have made ourselves safe. Then, someone or some group of people have an encounter with one or more Sabe, and in an instant, the whole house of cards collapses. In an instant, we realize that there is a whole area of reality out there that we know absolutely nothing about, and we have no way to become informed of this area. Fear of the unknown is terrifying, but only as long as it is unknown. We have been taught all our lives that Sabe does not exist, and when we realize in a single instant that it does, it brings up the question of what other unknown entities may be out there waiting for us. Fortunately, your website has done a lot to minimize this because we now have a great deal of information about this one aspect of the unknown. Thanks to all of the people. The moment we encounter Sabe, our sense of safety also goes down the tubes. Seeing something like this leaves the impression that we are no longer safe anywhere in the woods, probably not in our houses either, because something this large could easily rip the door off its hinges and come in at any time we wanted to. They are so massive that they may refuse to fire, that many refuse to fire on them, even if they are armed, because they think it would not have much of an effect. They realize that in an instant that they are not safe in either the woods or their homes, and maybe not even in the center of town. And the last and most earth-shattering realization is that we are not in control of much of anything. Sabe do not follow any rules or laws but their own. We can't keep them off our property. We can't keep them from attacking us if they want to. We can't understand what motivates them, and we can't go anywhere for help without being treated like we are mentally deficient. There's an aspect of social psychology that comes in here as well. People want to be socially accepted. And if they talk about seeing something that is not supposed to exist, they may be rejected by mainstream society. So, now we come back to the question of why. When groups of people see these things, they sometimes sever connections with others in the group, and never have anything more to do with them. It's because every time they think of others in the group, it reminds them all over again that, number one, they are not in control, and that number two, they are not safe, and number three, they have experienced the unknown and still don't know any more than they did when the experience happened. And four, if their identity is outed by a member of the group, they may become labeled as a nut job by mainstream society and lose friends and possibly their jobs, depending on who they work for. Having said all this, it is important to realize that every person is different from every other person. Some will isolate themselves, but this is not mentally healthy. Your website is a healthy outlet to relieve some of the stresses associated with these encounters, and giving those having the experience to adapt, and ultimately, this is all we can do, adapt. War veterans have more of a problem with Sabe encounters than with war, because war doesn't include the element of the unknown. They experience fear of death and fear that involves lost control, like being ordered into an active fire zone where it isn't safe. That they have never had to operate under a situation that is completely outside the concept of what should not exist. A Sabe encounter is in a class by itself and bears little resemblance to wartime, except in the root issues causing the problem. I hope this wasn't too long. I'm 76 years old. I live in Dallas, Texas. I no longer live in or near a forested part of the country, but in the past I've experienced many of the aspects associated with Sabe encounters, such as a strong feeling of being watched, being paced on a trail by someone who stays behind and just out of sight, walking when I walked and stopping when I stopped. Strange teepee-type structures in the forest, screams, etc. Much of this didn't make any sense when it happened, but it makes a lot more sense now, thanks to your website. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. You can use my name. I really don't care what anyone thinks. Sincerely, George D. Boone. George, absolutely appreciate the time you just took to share with the people, and guarantee it's going to help a lot of us, including me. One question that pops up for me, seeing so you're a professional in psychology department, is during your years, I wonder possibly how many times this topic may have come up, and did you ever have anybody come in to see you that was traumatized by seeing one of these things? And if you did speak of this topic with your colleagues, what did they think? Was it giggled about? Or did anybody else in your profession take it dead seriously and you guys actually have an authentic conversation about it? That's what I would be asking you first right out of the gate. Yeah, I've had I think there's a whole pile of emails that have come in from people answering the same question, and obviously I saved every one of them. I don't know what order they're in, because as I go, as soon as I get, like I'm sitting on the ferry for an hour and 40 minutes, one of my rituals is I go into my emails and I copy and paste and save them. I don't read them, but there will be, so I'm just saying for all you other people who have written in helpful knowledge to that question of why people gong each other, I just haven't got your email yet, and I will read it, all right? Anyway, moving right along. Thanks again for sending that in. And if you want to email me again and answer the questions I just rifled at you, I'd be appreciative to receive and share with everybody. Now, moving right along. Excuse me. This is titled Saturday Experiences. Hi, Steve. 8 or 10 years ago, I saw a Saturday walking straight towards the highway I was traveling down at 60 miles per hour. Excuse me. I was in southeastern Washington, wheat country, in the wide open, broad daylight. Looked to my right, up a grassy swale between harvested wheat fields. He was not huge, 6 to 7 feet tall, maybe about 50 yards away. Walking towards it and looking right at the highway. I looked right at him for 4 or 5 seconds. Then I was past him and he was out of my sight. This is where it gets really weird. I was not a man in a hurry, far from it. If I am driving along anywhere and I see something I want a better look at, anything, a flower, a bird, an animal, different geology, something that blew out of someone's vehicle and onto the shoulder, I pull over and walk back for a better look. I just saw a Bigfoot. I prefer the name Saturday. And I didn't even think of pulling over. I just kept going. I felt no fear or foreboding. I do not fear much. And strangely, no need to stop. Very strange. A few years after that, I was driving south on Highway 395 through northeast Oregon. I had passed through Pendleton and was heading down to the Burns. I was driving through the last mountain pass before you drive out of the forest. There's a clear, dry road and 3 foot of snow on the pass. I was driving 40-45 miles per hour in no hurry at all, taking in the country and watching for critters, tracks, whatever there was to see. You know how we outdoorsmen are. I looked to my left up a bare snow-covered cut bank, 50 foot tall and at about 45-degree pitch. There was a strange line trail of big tracks coming down the road at a bit of an angle from the tree line. Big single tracks, 5 to 6 feet apart in a perfectly straight line, no toe drag, no sliding. I knew exactly what made that trail. I was in my 50s. I've been a big game hunter since I was 12 years old, and I know how to track and trail and have hunted deer and elk in snow, and with great joy and success since the 1980s. I'm 63 now and still a hunter. Again, I did not pull over to go back for a longer look. Knew what I was looking at, did not do what I would ordinarily do. Really strange. I have no answer for why I didn't pull over. After watching your channel for several months, things I've observed in the past come back to me, and I felt like I had found answers to things I'd wondered about, but lost no sleep over. There are other stories of UFOs and other strangeness, maybe another day. Okay, man. Frank, absolutely appreciate it. You sending that in. And I can almost sort of relate in a way. Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I can feel it when things are possibly looking at me. I get dozens of emails from people saying they're right in the forest behind you, behind the camera. Check it out, zoom in, check it out at mark whatever on the video. And I don't ever. So you know, I'm not being rude. It's just like, I don't give a shit. I've already seen them. I know they are around. Do I know if one's right behind me or not? I don't know. No big deal. I'm minding my own business. I don't need to know. There probably are. I've had shit thrown at me while talking to you guys. What else has happened? Well, enough has happened. One memory that does come up related to your email, years ago, I'll never forget, I was actually taking a course to become a certified trapper so I could go after the wolf population explosion near home. And I was at 100 Mile, Lac La Hache or something, British Columbia, middle of winter. 2 other guys with me. And we got the course done. We're driving back, full on middle winter. And we're driving up and over the Duffy Lake Highway. The Duffy Lake, that frozen ice, is where I shared that wolf kill on the ice recently in a video. The same lake. It's also the same lake where that huge snow slide came down and shot across the lake. Same lake. And we're driving along from the north end. Would it be east end? Northeast end? Heading home, south. And we stopped, and you could plainly see, easily, from one side of the lake where you saw me controlling the drone to the other side of the lake, straight across, and you could see the prints, boom, 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 footprints going all the way along the far side of the lake, paralleling the lake shore, maybe 5-10 yards offshore on the ice. And you could easily see, it was at least a 5-6 foot stride between those prints, and they were just trucking all the way down the lake. And one guy that was with us was an A-type personality dude from New Zealand originally. And I'm like, look at that shit. And he's like, well, it must be a heli skier. No, it's not a heli skier. The heli skiers, first off, don't ski down from those tops to the lake ice. Otherwise, they'd be parked there all the time and come out all the time. There's no frickin' way. And there's no ski tracks up in any of the chutes. And he's just trying to rattle off useless excuses to what it was, because it's another person who didn't want to acknowledge it. Meanwhile, it was so blatant obvious, it was stupid. And did I go get a snowmobile and go back and film them? No. Did I even videotape or take a picture? No. Carried on. Funny, right? Here come the chicken gangsters. Little bastards. Thanks again for sending that in, man. Absolutely appreciate it. All right, here we go. This one is titled, looks like it might be a long one, but all I got is time right now, right? 3-day encounter. Ugh. Here we go. Steve, you can use my name. It's Angela. I don't mind you using my name. My sister T was with me, but I didn't get permission to use her name, so we'll call her T. We are registered Native American Indians from the state of Oregon. Registered. I've never heard of that. Registered. I've never heard of that term at all. I hope it's not, I'm not being insulting. I'm not trying to be, but as soon as I hear registered Native American Indians from the state of Oregon, I just feel like saying to the government, yeah, register this, you motherfuckers, right? We were raised loggers and daughters. We loved to fish, hunt, camp, and all the outdoor sports you can think of. We were raised to live off the land. We weren't scared of much. Been chased by a bear, had cougar run-ins, so you can say not much bothers us. This encounter happened in September of '76, just a day after Labor Day that year. We were both pregnant at the time. I was 9 months pregnant and T 2 months behind me. We decided to go to one of our old stomping grounds up Canal Creek. We wanted to camp for a few days. We've been going there for years, camping for 3 months at a time, there while our fathers logged that mountain off. The families would camp in a clearing, the men made while logging. That day, T and I headed up to Canal Creek up Highway 34. We were driving on this sunny day to check out the campsite to make sure it was not full with campers. I was driving that day because my sister didn't drive back then. As we were driving up, we came around a corner to a straight stretch and seen someone walking up the road at us in our lane. I slowed to about 40 miles, and we realized at the same time it was a creature of some kind. At that time, we didn't even know a Bigfoot, but we both said at the same time, that's not a bear. I almost slowed to a stop. All the while, my sister was freaking out. I had to go into the other lane as to not hit this slow walking creature. It was just ambling up the highway in our lane. We could tell it had just come up from the clam mud across the road because it had gray mud from the beachy area from its knees down, as if it had been digging for clams. We used to dig there ourselves, so we figured that's what it was doing. It ambled off the road to a new house built on the right. We knew the people who built it, and they had large stumps in their new yard. They hadn't cleared yet. And big bay windows in front of the house. I pulled off the side of the road and told my sister, we need to let them know of the creature in their yard. She said, oh no. We watched the 7-foot creature, or taller, walk around a few stumps before going into the woods there by the house. The creature was dark in color from the knees up, dome head, not afraid of us. It was very large. But after it went into the woods, we just drove on up to our turn to get to the campground. But as the crow flies, the campground is only 5 miles from where we seen the creature. When we got to the campground, you could go on either side, one on the Forest Service site, or drive across the creek to the sites where the loggers cleared up a huge field just off the mountain to camp. No one was up there. They had all gone home, so we had the grounds to ourselves. We went back home to our gear. We went back home, got our gear, plus our dad was home, so we told him what we saw, and he had no idea what it could be. So the next day we headed back up to set up for the few days we planned on camping. Our dad came up to help us set up. I had a 52 GMC pickup truck, and Dad said he was going to hang a tarp up so we could pitch our very small pup tents under the tarp. He parked under the tree, climbed the roof of my truck, and his 6-foot frame climbed up the tree and hung our tarp, and we were set. After we left, he readied our site, cooler on the picnic table full of a loaf of bread, potatoes, eggs, butter, lunch meat, just a few things to eat. We had brought 4 big heavy cast iron skillets with us. We would set them on the table next to our cooler. We settled in for the night. We didn't cook that night for some reason, but did build a big fire. We sat around the fire till 11 p.m., decided to head to our tents where we had set them up facing each other so we could gab the night away. We listened to the frogs in the stream and the crickets. Then we heard something climb the tree our tarp was tied to. As we were listening, we could tell it was a family of baby raccoons climbing the tree and sliding down our tarp. We figured there were 5 of them. You could hear them chattering, having fun, sliding down by one. They did this for about 45 minutes. My sister and I were enjoying it very much. We talked how cute it was. As we laid there in our own tents listening, we heard silence. We knew there was a predator around. No frogs, no crickets, no raccoons, dead silence. My sister whispered to me, and she'd hear the silence and whispered back, yes. I was a bit worried because the road before our camp was to Bear Creek, and yes, they had bears there. I brought along a .22 rifle with me and always slept with it in my sleeping bag every time we camped. Plus, since we were both pregnant, I'd parked my truck close to us and had it parked to the head out in case one of us went into labor and had to leave quickly. Then all of a sudden in the silence we heard something going through our cooler very quietly. No loud breathing, no smell, no heavy footprints, just something going through the cooler. We know it was walking around. We could hear twigs breaking outside of my tent. And Lordy, Steve, I got scared and went deep into my sleeping bag, hanging on for dear life to my rifle. But I knew if it had been a bear, we'd have heard more. I don't even think I was breathing at the time, but I knew it was outside my tent. I could just feel it. I whispered to T. I was coming out of my sleeping bag and running to get the truck, and when she heard me pull up to get in, just as I was stepping into the pitch black night, I heard something claw my truck, nails on metal. I stepped back in my tent, hunkered down until daylight. My sister and I laid there listening until about 6 a.m. when the sun came out and we could feel it had gone. We both climbed out to assess the damage. Whatever it was, you could tell it was gone. It had taken our bread out of the cooler, all of the contents, and set them in place. It had taken our bread out of the cooler all of the contents, and set them on the picnic table. The only thing missing was our butter. We looked for prints, but the ground was too hard. We did discover our 4 heavy cast iron skillets were carried 20 feet from the picnic table and set on the ground. Not knocked off, but picked up and moved. Weird. I was pretty mad we couldn't cook because I was going to use the butter to cook with. We weren't afraid, just mad it took the butter. We knew it wasn't a bear or coons. They would have tore into the bread and ate it. Plus the meats were not disturbed either, just sat on the table next to the cooler. How bizarre is that? So we didn't live too far, so we put everything back in the cooler, set the cast iron skillets back next to it on the table, and headed back to our parents' house to get butter to cook with. We should have been scared, but we figured the scare was over. Boy, were we wrong. After getting more butter, we headed back to camp again, but when we got there, we got the shock of a lifetime. Our camp was destroyed. The things were taken out of the cooler again, set on the table, cast iron skillets back on the ground in the exact spot, still stacked up. Plus our tents were flattened, not ripped apart. Our chairs folded down on the ground, and that tarp hung so high up, was untied. Not torn down, but untied. And over our flattened tents. We looked around from the truck and we both could feel we were being watched from the base of the mountain next to our camp. You could feel the anger. Our sixth sense told us not to stay. This is a very strong warning. I told my sister not to pack anything, just throw it in the back of the truck. Something wants us out of here.